So it is not really a short period of time, not as colorful as doctors, but successful from my point of view. I will start off from when I left university. I mean, looking for a job. I studied Bachelor of Commerce, and those days, the better students would be employed right out of university into the auditing firms. So I wasn't one of those ones. I had to, I had to walk around and look for a job. And I remember then the bank, I wanted to work for a bank. And I thought that, I should work for Standard Chartered Bank, but I think I didn't get any reception there at the onset. So I went to DFCU and I was given an entry job as a teller. So I started out as a teller and did that for some time, and then went and did some bank operations, and slowly progressed into specializing in the risk function. And I think that at that point in time, I was really doing the operational bit of the organization, where you're doing the day-to-day work. You're either managing cash or passing ledgers or managing the portfolio, or doing what you have to do under the supervision or instruction of a senior or a manager. So I did a bit of that work, but with ambition. For me, I think earlier on, or still now, it is the drive to be better, the drive to get to better than what I am today. So I think that drove me a lot. And I also had a coach who used to tell me that tomorrow should be better than today. So whatever you equip yourself with to get better tomorrow, use it. If it is friendships, use it. If it is study, use it. If it is work, do it for tomorrow. So I invested a lot in being an excellent person, performing very well, ensuring that I'm visible wherever I am, ensuring that I'm engaging into whatever is happening. I am fully vested in what I'm doing. So I saw myself progressing, and of course, having good people around you to nudge you on. Because I remember really moving from the basic bank operations to some sort of focused work like risk management. I needed to speak to my manager, and even having a good relationship with people who are above you. I needed to speak to my manager then, and I told him that there's a role that is being advertised. I would really want to go for it, but I've been told that they're looking for people who have skills that I do not have. And he said to me that, what do you lose if you try? Just try. And I think that having such relationships with people who know better is encouraging. And I got that job, and it sort of focused me into understanding the risk universe and trying to apply myself and seeing how best I can ride on that cloud. And well, for me, it wasn't that I also quickly realized that probably my blessing is not in one location. So I kept myself out there looking for opportunities, not to settle, because I usually have that mentality, you don't settle. That is always better out there if you look for it. So I kept looking around, and it could be looked at as job hopping. But for me, I was looking for something that is more satisfying, something that is additional, something that is that I can speak to, that, now I'm doing operations, now I am doing specific operations, now I'm actually managing a team. And the most recent role that I did before I moved into the one that I'm doing, I was the corporate credit director at the then Barclays, which is ABSA. And there included managing the portfolio, managing people, influencing strategy, influencing policy. And, it is all, now it is C-suite, and you're actually determining or helping to achieve the vision of the bank or the vision of the organization. You're part of management, you're part of the director or the exco team. So for me, that is the growth pattern that I've seen. But when I got there, still in my pursuit for something bigger, something greater, I thought, okay, how can I expand my experience? I've done all this in the banking sector in Uganda. How can I go into the region? Are there opportunities out there? And there's opportunity, chance, but you also have to be ready and in position to take up the opportunity or the chance that has come your way. So then I got an opportunity at the Eastern Southern Trade and Development Bank, widely known as TDB. But by then it was called PTA Bank. So at the decision I had to make then, because the opportunity that was available seemed to be lower than the position I was holding then. And I needed to make a decision. What do I really want? Do I want to widen my experience regionally, or I want to continue growing in this space that I'm in? And for me then, what made sense, I needed to do a lot of things. I felt like, I've been born, bred, and done everything here. If this opportunity arises, let me see how I can use that opportunity to continue to grow and expand and expose myself to environments or to experiences that are beyond what I'm doing now. So I did that. And although development finance is a different ballgame from commercial finance in terms of the way things are managed, I'm grateful that I took the leap of faith, and I've seen myself. The growth is not as exponential or as quick as it was happening on the other side. It's a bit slower. There's a lot of things to manage, and that is also an experience. That's something you learn, that it is not just about being technically competent. It's not about being feeling or being the right person, but there's so many other aspects that one brings to the role that you need to understand, the diplomacy and connections and networks, all that. So for me, it has been an experience, and I've seen myself grow slower, but I am growing, and I can see the horizon now, and I can speak with confidence that it was the right move for me, even though it seems like I moved from C-suite back to operations. But now the operations that I'm looking at is a wider scale, a wider scheme of things. As Dr. Robin talks about what he was doing at the IMF, where you have to meet senior people in a country to deliberate on probably financing structure or anything, you get that experience. You're speaking to people who make major decisions elsewhere, but in your organization, you're actually the person who holds the pen. So it is those dynamics that one has to understand, that what exactly is in it for me, and how can I use it to grow, and to continuously look for how can I make myself better. I keep learning. Just the other day, I was telling somebody that now I must get my DBA in order. I'm already on course. I need to be, even academically, because, you don't say I'm progressing when your papers are still where you started off when you are being employed. So there is more to do. But for me, I think it is continuously knowing that there is always better for me. I can always improve. I can achieve it. I can do it. Let me just put more to myself, more to my connections, more to my knowledge, more to my experience, and gracefully handle everything forward. I think that is my story in a nutshell.
Wow, Aida, you really undersell yourself when you started saying all these things. 22 years is no mean feat by any chance, and you've had a very, very peculiar and unique path. And I think a lot of the people that are listening really appreciate this, because I'm sure they've had paths that has varied. At least I have. So I'm really appreciative of the progress that you've made. But you sort of inadvertently referred to two Japanese concepts. One is called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. I think Dr. Robin mentioned this, but your continuous drive to be better. You've even infected me with it as you spoke. Is amazing. And then the second one, Japanese leadership concept is ui baitori. Let's not bite our tongues, but it means that it's important to focus on your own progress and to create your unique path, and to realize that you can control your growth trajectory. And I think I really like that you compete with yourself, and I think that's very, very important in an individual. But you also emphasize, as Dr. Robin told us, about the skills that he needed to be able to excel at the board level, but now you emphasize the fact that there's a lot of power at operations level. You influence policy, you influence strategy. I mean, you're the one even who drafts the papers and who sometimes as management show the board that yes, even this direction you're taking might not be able to meet the bottom line. But I also liked the journey of your progress to specialization in the risk area. And then your very peculiar transition from operations to C-suite. Someone says sometimes you have to decide whether you want to be a big fish in a pond or a small fish in a large sea. I think you've turned to the other one. And I liked also the experience you've had coming from commercial finance to development finance, and having you talked about certain skills, and I'll list them here. You talked about the importance of coaching, and I think that's what the League of East African Directors is about. We're actually going to start an exciting program called Ready to Lead for those that want to transition from operations to governance, and coaching Mr. Peter Chimboa always tells us that if the highest paid football player needs a coach, why don't we all use coaches? The importance of coaching, the importance of continuous advancement of your skilling. Your CV should not look the same at any one time. Ensuring visibility. I think that's something that a lot of us take for granted, and yet it's the visibility that will help even the person speaking for you in the board to talk about you. Your interpersonal relations. It was interesting how you talked about you having interpersonal relations, and then great interpersonal relations with your supervisor to the extent that they spoke for you, but also you got to use these relations now in the need for diplomacy in your new role in development finance. That was very interesting, and I think I loved your call to action, not to settle. Thank you so much, Aida and Dr. Robin. I want to now ask the technical question here, and this is to Dr. Robin. How do you, from the board, ensure that your operational teams understand and follow governance policies and expectations, and then still keep your fingers out of the pie? Especially if you've had a lot of experience in operations as well.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. I was also very fascinated by Aida's journey. And remarkably, I think we all emphasized we touched on the same issues. And it's not surprising. I think you need the same skills to a great extent, as whether it's in management or it's in the board. But of course, the way you apply these skills is very different because the roles are very, very different. Now, you asked a question, how do you ensure the operations team understand and follow governance, right? So I'm going to focus mostly on governance, but I think fundamentally, as a leader on the board, you have to establish a culture. And that culture is very, very important. And then that culture is cascaded down to management and to the staff as well. So corporate culture is extremely important, and it has to be shaped by the board. That's the only way, a major way you can ensure that management and staff, can be able to implement board policies, because there has to be some kind of a consistency. Importantly and related to this is that as directors, you have to play role models. And particularly, it's important that you walk the talk. Whatever you say should be something you practice, and management and staff should be able to see that very clearly. Because if you don't walk the talk, I think it's very, very difficult to convince anybody that the talk is important. So walk the talk, it's very, very important. Two, it's critically important to understand your role as a director as opposed to management. Once you understand that role, then I think it will be very important for you. It will enable you to deliver and perform as a director. Now, I think you have to be, as a director, or at least at the board, you have to understand that you are even more removed from operations, okay? Because the higher you go, you are far more removed from operations. And that by definition also implies that you have less control on operations. And you have to maintain that approach, particularly through delegation. You have to learn to delegate. Essentially, you keep your nose in and your fingers out. Easily said than done. But I think understanding the role plays a very critical, will be very critical for you. Because as long as you understand the role, you then realize that you are not going to be to control the situation. You are going to influence it. And you have to be able to act accordingly. Now, what comes with this role is communication. There has to be clarity. A board has to develop a strategic framework or a strategy which is clear and which can then be cascaded down to management and staff, and they can be able to understand it very, very clearly. In other words, you have to take rather complex issues and break them down to simpler issues, which will enable management and staff to be able to understand and then execute in the process. It's also very important to create incentives to ensure that management and staff would be given incentives to behave in a particular way, which will be reflective of the board's policies. And clearly also, if people are not following up, you have to be able to take rather tough measures so everybody will understand very clearly where the boundaries are. I think in this regard also, it's very important to share the limelight, recognize proper behavior or achievements as you are rewarding it, but recognize it, and you should share with the management as well as staff on those achievements. And also related to that is you have to be able to give feedback. You have to be able to give constructive feedback and on a regular basis. So don't embarrass people. Talk to them in a way which will be useful for them to understand what it is they didn't get right or what it is they got right. And I think your line of communication is extremely important. Finally, I think, and I liked Aida talking about a growth mindset and continuous learning. You have to create an environment which is conducive to learning. You have to understand managers and staff are going to make mistakes, but that's part of the learning process. We have to understand that mistakes are our best teachers. I'm not saying that you should go out there and encourage people to make mistakes, but if they make genuine mistakes, help them to understand how they can do it better and help them to go back and continue to practice until they can move in the right direction. I think embarrassing people and creating an atmosphere where people are have fear or are scared and cannot experiment, I think can be very, very detrimental to the institution. Let me stop there for now. Thank you.
Robin, because you've emphasized the importance of breaking down the strategic plan of the board, the strategic intention, and for the shareholders, which the board, represents. And my former employer, National Water, we had a habit of making sure even the plumber knew what their contribution to the strategic plan was, so that they know what their role in the bigger picture is. I think that's very important. And also the performance incentives, I really love that, because a lot of times the only way management or operations feel appreciated or even incentivized to perform better is when there's some performance incentives or a clear line of growth. And I like your emphasis, I think, on creating an enabling environment as opposed to a constrictive environment, and to allow management to make mistakes, because then they learn from it. You also emphasize the open lines of communication, and I heard from you about the importance of the board to contribute to give proper feedback, and probably even contribute their expertise, because in the famous case of Jamwa, the last concluded case, I think it was one of the judges who stated that now the standard of skill, the standard to judge a board director is no longer that of an ordinary person, and they said that the standard is now that of skill. For instance, if you are head of the audit committee, I think the Bank of Uganda now released new guidelines, you should have some audit experience or skill or training in that area. So I think it's important to also create an environment of learning, as you said. But I loved how you began, establish a culture. I think even children, if you don't give them a culture, if you don't give them a basis of what is expected, then it will not be very helpful.
Smart 24